I guess with that being said, without further ado, I'll go ahead and call the Halifax Finance Committee meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. Today is Monday, November 13th. This meeting is being conducted remotely and recorded by Area 58. In attendance from the Halifax Finance Committee is Cheryl Zarella-Burke, Michael Bennett, Bill Smith, Frank Johnston, Jim Walters, EJ Bryan, and myself, Todd Dargy. So I guess, yeah, so we'll skip in the agenda down a bit just to, in the interest of time, for the folks that have joined for the Thorndike development project, I guess. So I don't know who's going to speak to that. I guess we did receive the memo that you sent around, Cody, so thanks for sharing that. But I guess I'll turn it over to you to kick it off.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Todd. So I sent out the financial impact memo to the committee earlier. Basically, I wanted to have Thorndike in. So you may or may not be aware, they're proposing to build a condominium complex on Monpont Street, 265 Monpont and 266 Monpont. They've been before the Board of Selectmen several times. They went before our zoning bylaw review committee most recently. And it'll be the subject of one of the articles, or a couple of the articles of the special town meeting on December 14th. So really just wanted to, obviously with you overseeing finances, being the finance committee, the financial impact is a major factor of this. So we thought it would be great to introduce you to the project generally, but also on the more specifically the financial side. Lloyd is here. This is his Thorndike is his company, and he's been overseeing the project. And then Craig Seymour of DRG Advisory Services is the one that did the financial analysis there. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Lloyd, and Craig, and Michael as well. Michael Devon is from Thorndike as well.
Great. Thank you, Cody. Is it possible for me to share my screen? If I hit share, will that work, or do I need it enabled?
It should.
Oh, that looks like something. It looks like it's working. Okay. Can you folks see my site map?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Cody. So yes, my name is Lloyd Geisinger. I'm the president of Thorndike Development, and Michael Devon from my office. Craig Seymour has done the financial analysis. Craig and I have worked together for too many years to keep track of. I thought I would just take a couple of minutes and orient you to the proposal itself, and then turn the floor over to Craig to provide you with a summary of the financial analysis that he did. And then, of course, we're happy to answer any questions. So this whole proposal started about 9 months ago. We had originally intended to build apartments on the site, but we were approached by several of the selectmen asking whether we would have an interest in switching to a senior housing proposal. And in combination with that, as the discussions evolved, we collectively hit on the idea of relocating the proposed senior center to this site, with Thorndike making a substantial financial contribution vis-a-vis mitigation payments to the tune of $2.6 million, or up to $2.6 million, in order to facilitate the construction of the senior center. So on this plan, just to orient you, Monpont Street cuts through the kind of 2/3 of the way down. North is to the left. The primary site is east of Monpont, 265 Monpont. And on the opposite side, we also own a small parcel of land, 266 Monpont. As this has unfolded, the plan is to deed this property to the town for $1, and providing the site for the construction of the senior center and the site for the construction of 4 pickleball courts, which would be public courts. And then we would be building 2 buildings in the rear section of the site, shown here at the top of the page, each of which is 3 stories high, with elevators restricted to senior condominiums, and then one building across the street. So among the three buildings, a total of 102 condominiums, all focused on seniors. We've agreed through discussions with the town, with Cody and town council, that the condominium documents would include a restriction that no school-age children would be permitted to reside here permanently. This being a senior housing community, that's very typical. We've built a whole bunch of these over the last 30 years, and that provision has been in every one of our condo docs. And so with respect to the senior center itself, as I'm sure you're aware, the town had previously authorized $1.7 million for the construction of the senior center. The plan that will be part of the town meeting vote calls for $1.2 million of that 1.7 to be allocated to the construction of the senior center. And Thorndike would be contributing the remainder required up to $2.6 million based on budgets that we've put together that will be peer reviewed. We think the total cost at this point, I should say we think, we've built buildings just like this, but we expect the total cost will be approximately $3.2 million. So the 1.2 plus the 3.6 equals 3.8, providing a nice cushion. The pickleball courts will be built by Thorndike and donated to the town. And the last thing I'll say before turning it over to Craig is that the way the proposal has been structured, if a town meeting votes to approve the zoning necessary to allow for the senior housing project to go forward, Thorndike would then deed this property to the town once we have our site plan approval. And as each of the first 36 units close, we would be making a portion of the mitigation payments to the town, such that at the end of the first building, essentially 1/3 of the way through the project, the town would be able to start construction on the senior center. Lastly, we would expect to bid on the construction of the senior center, where we have a construction company that builds all of our own work. This is well within our wheelhouse, and we understand this would be a public bidding process, but we would hope to be considered for that bid. But either way, we would be funding the senior center through the development itself. I'll pause and take some questions on the proposal if you'd like, or we can just turn it over to Craig and let him through.
I just had a quick question for you. So what's the estimated timeline, I guess, for each of the buildings?
So it takes us about 9 months to build one of these buildings.
Okay.
So if there is a successful town meeting vote in December, we would hope to break ground next summer, since we still have to go through the site plan approval process with the town and Conservation Commission. So we would be looking at spring of 2025, when under the, as I just described it, the senior center would be able to go forward.
Okay.
And I think realistically, it's a 12-month construction project for the senior center.
Okay, so by the spring of 26, you're estimating?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, spring of 26. And I would just mention that, we're hopeful, frankly, that we'll be able to submit a winning bid and be awarded the contract, in which case we're going to do everything we can to accelerate that time schedule, because frankly, the senior center will be a great amenity for our residents. It's part of the attraction, and we think it will help to sell the condominiums.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But until we get into, the actual project, and until interest rates decide to come down a little bit, it's a little hard to predict. But I think what I just described to you is a very reasonable middle of the road schedule.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you, Lloyd. Appreciate that. Any other questions from anyone on the committee? Go ahead, Frank.
Frank Johnston, Lloyd. Construction, would that start on building number 1 first on 265 Montponset?
We would definitely start on either building 1 or building 2. I'm until we get into the definitive engineering and understand exactly how the utilities will run. I can't say which of those two buildings would go first, but it would be one of those two.
And then you would have to have a third of those under agreement for purchase prior to starting on the senior building. Is that correct?
The way we have it set up right now in the draft agreement, we would need to have, when we've sold and closed on 36 units, so one building's worth, we were required to post a bond for the remainder of the payment due to the town. So the town would have our half of our payment, they would have the town's $1.2 million, and they would have a bond guaranteeing the last piece of the payment as we build out the next building.
In an economic downturn or uncertainty, potentially you may only build either building 1 or building 2. Is that correct?
Well, the way I'll answer that question is that while if we talk about a worst case scenario and we weren't able to proceed, once the condominium is in place and the first building is built and the association is established and the permits have been perfected, if we don't build it, someone else will build it. There's no turning back at that point. There could be a pause, yes, but the way we have it set up, at the point that the town would start the senior center, in other words, once we've paid in the first 36 payments, there would be a bond posted for the remainder. So even if the project didn't go forward, the town would be guaranteed its final payment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Anyone else? Next committee have any questions for Lloyd?
Todd, I have a
I
couple questions.
I just have one question for Lloyd. So I appreciate you jumping on again. I know we've talked a couple of times. So just to kind of hone in on what Frank was saying. So what happens if only 36 units get built and bought?
With respect to the construction of the senior center?
The project overall.
So as I mentioned, I've been doing this 40 years, and over that 40-year period, I've purchased projects that got into trouble. Where a builder was unable, because of an economic downturn, to the project, a bank took back the property. And when the bank does that, with the condominium association in place and one building delivered, the bank has no option but to allow the development, to sell it with the development rights that exist. It's not as though the condominium can be terminated. It would be illegal to do that. So either the property sits without those buildings ever being built, or the far more likely scenario is a lender sells the property at auction or however to another builder who gets a good deal and proceeds to deliver those homes, or else they wouldn't buy the property in the first instance.
Sure. So that certainly makes sense. So just want to expand on your, since you kind of brought up the amount of work that you've done in this vertical, how many other over 55 communities are there that you have participated in on the South Shore area of Massachusetts?
Well, I think we built our first one a little over 20 years ago. We've been building over 55 communities continuously ever since without stopping.
Okay.
I'm not sure I could tell you the exact number, but it's a couple of thousand units.
All in the South Shore of Massachusetts?
Between no farther north than Hudson. So let's see, Hudson, Marshfield, Hanover, Rockland, Quincy, Plymouth, Rainham. Is that enough? Give you a sense of it.
Sure. And the success rate. So I guess, and I'm sure we're going to get into this when we get into the draft memorandum here, but the numbers in there are based on full occupancy, full sale of 102 units.
They are. That is correct. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Over what time frame do you think, and in your opinion, which I'm asking for your professional opinion,
Sure.
How long is it going to take to get the 36, and how long do you think after that is going to take to get the 102? Because the burden of the costs are either going to be on the town or Thorndike, or somebody is going to have to do the carrying costs there.
Right. So these are privately maintained roads. There's no school age kids. So the burden would really be on the owners of the property for the majority of the cost. Craig can get into that a little bit more. So I'll answer the question two different ways. First, in my 41 years, we have finished every single project we've ever started without exception. So, and we are very excited about this. It's a great location for this type of product, and we're very bullish on it. The second thing I will say to you is that as a company, our approach to development is one of maintaining pace. So there are builders out there who try and get top dollar, and they'll accept a certain pace, but we gear everything towards pace of sales. And in the last 5 years, we've conveyed 600 condominium units of this type in 4 different locations, and we've averaged 50 sales per year per project. So 1 a week. Now, I will tell you that if we were trying to sell this right now, we'd be lucky to get 1 a month.
Right.
The market is very slow right now. But those of us who like reading crystal balls think that's probably a good thing. So that a year from now, we hope we're in a better position. But look, real estate is cyclical. We all know that.
Yeah. Okay. That's all I had. Thank you, sir. Appreciate the response.
All right, thank you, Jim. EJ, did you have a question still there?
I did, Todd. Thanks. Lloyd, thanks for joining. Again, I appreciate you taking the time. Similar to what Frank and Jim have already commented on. And Cody, this might be a question for you. How did we arrive at the need for 102 units? Was there some type of study that led us to believe that that's what we wanted to install here?
That really, EJ, comes back to the initial complex that was proposed was for 206 or around there, a 40B development. It was supposed to be all rentals. And that number was derived from basically the developer was going to have to put in a treatment plant, a sewage treatment plant. And obviously, as you know, that's a very high cost. And so that was the number for that to make sense for them. And then this, on the other hand, they were able to reduce it to that the existing number because of the senior housing. The flow rates with Title V are lower, so they won't have to do a treatment plant. So it really was just based on what economically made sense for the developer coming in, and also a number that the Board of Selectmen felt comfortable with, considering we were looking at over 200 with the affordable housing. So we thought it was kind of a fair middle ground.
Okay, so we kind of backed into that number with there was no specific guidance that got us there, I guess is my point.
Well,
Because
Cody's description was spot on, but I could put a little more meat on the bones. The project maxes out at 102 due to the Title V flows that are permitted without a treatment plant. So, and Cody's absolutely right. Treatment plant is $2.5 million. So a project of this scale would not be financially feasible if we had to build a treatment plant. So we were maxed out at 102. Beyond that, from a cost efficiency standpoint, building buildings that have elevators in them, because for senior housing, we consider that to be a threshold item. We wouldn't build a multi-story building without an elevator. And we've built a lot of these particular size buildings. This is the most efficient size building for us to build. So the 36 unit building, which is 12 units per floor with an elevator in the center, 3 stories high, is a very efficient building. So those two issues kind of converged. The building across the street at 266, which is only 30 units, is 30 units because we can't fit the 36 unit building on that piece of property. It's a little less efficient, but we're able to make sense of it. So all of this then gave us an economic base, which then led to our negotiations to fund the senior center, and being able to allocate sufficient dollars to build the senior center required, from our perspective, a project of this scale. So yes, it's private developer driven, as well as limited by the leaching field size.
Okay. And I know, Lloyd, that you mentioned this earlier on, but could you just say it again for me, just so I make sure I have it right? When the senior center construction cannot start until, is it the first 36 are sold or the first 36 are built?
First 36 or so conveyed. We make a payment to the town every time each one of those occupancy permits are issued.
Okay.
And we're not going to ask for an occupancy permit if the unit isn't sold. So,
Okay.
Yes.
So we're looking at post 26 at a minimum for seeing that result start to kick in.
We would hope to start the building in 25. So yes, sometime in 26, not post 26. So summer of 24, we start construction on the first condo building. I think that's very realistic. In fact, we're ramping everything up right now to do that. 9 months to build the building puts us in early spring of 25 to be able to convey the first units in the first building. So by summer of 25, working obviously very closely with the town, we would expect to be able to start construction on the senior center. 12 months is a very reasonable time frame to build this particular building.
Okay, and average cost, we'll get into this in the financial report here, but the average cost of each unit was $488,000.
Yeah, that's a when we put that together with Craig, costs had peaked, and pricing was, we were trying to drive. We've actually seen costs come down some since then, and I think that number is a little high. But we're still a year away. So, we would expect to be able to offer some of the units in the high threes, and then the mid fours. That's kind of the range we're looking at.
Okay. Thank you, Lloyd. Appreciate it.
I'd like to, if we could, turn it over to Craig, because he's the one who has the 7 o'clock hard stop. And then if you have more questions for me, I'm happy to answer them, if that's all right with
Yeah, sure. Let's do that. Yeah.
Okay. Craig, take it away.
Thank you, Lloyd, and thank you, members of the committee, for moving your meeting up here a little bit and giving me that opportunity to talk to you before my next meeting that starts at 7 o'clock. As Lloyd said, there's 102 units that we're planning for. He had given me some cost figures and looking at some of the market assessments. What I did is did a fiscal impact analysis, and just as background, a fiscal impact analysis looks at the financial impact on the town's general fund. It doesn't look at any special items that might be outside the general fund. It looks just at that in terms of that's the source of what the tax rate comes from and where your tax levies come from. So it looks at two things. It looks at the potential revenues that this project will generate, and it looks at the potential incremental average costs that an increase in either the population by number of people or the number of households will impact on those items on the general fund that vary according to incremental changes in the size of the town. We looked at this. I came up with some averages in terms of the population. The 102 units, I'm estimating about 1.6 people per unit. That ends up to 163 total population. It might be a little higher, it might be a little lower, depending upon the circumstances. Generally, these types of projects, and Lloyd can vouch for this, rarely have more than 2 people in a 2-bedroom unit. That's a very rare occurrence, unless there's a caregiver or somebody like that. But other than that, what we did is looked at the last audited financial statements for fiscal year 21, which I had back in the spring, and that's been updated. Those can be updated, but I don't think the changes will be that much. And then broke down the general fund in terms of the various departmental costs to look at those on a per capita or a per household basis. And on the revenues, what we did is looked at the potential property tax revenues coming on off of this project. Not so much on the sales price, because even though property taxes, in theory, the assessments are based on fair market value, in reality, the assessment values, and particularly of new properties like this, tend to be somewhat below the market value at the time that they are sold. That's because it's a year or two lag process for assessments to catch up. And by that time, some of these projects, some of these buildings, or some of these units will be starting to get along. They're a couple of years old. And so the average assessment, and it's typical across town, because I looked at some of the other properties in town, runs about anywhere from 67 to say 85% of the full market value at the time. So basing on that, I looked and said that the total assessment of this, of all the units online, and the way we do this, by the way, instead of looking at incrementally, we'll look at from a time perspective. We assume the whole thing is built out today, because we use today's costs as the basis for this. And the reasoning for that is the assumption is that the way the costs are operating in the town now are indicative of how they're going to be in the future. There's no major changes going to take place either in the way revenues collected or the way costs are expended. And so what's been done in the past is a good way of forecasting what will happen in the future. So using current dollars, today's dollars, it's about $44 million in assessed value that we put on this. And at the current tax rate, that if the project suddenly magically appeared today, that'd be about $650,000 in annual revenue from property taxes. It would also generate some other revenues, such as motor vehicle taxes. And I estimated that it's small, say roughly $45,000 from that, and other fees and those types of things that the typical household may pay for charges for services and stuff would also be generated by it. There's also one-time fees involved with this. The current building permit fee that you have of $1% of our construction costs, that comes into over $370,000 that'll be coming into the general fund. Now, some of those costs obviously will be used to offset the costs for inspections and so on. But generally on big projects, in my experience, is the inspection costs, those building permits rarely equate to the revenue coming in, and that excess flows back and stays in the general fund. So that's another potential source of revenue. Briefly on the municipal service costs, again, I used the fiscal 21 audited statements, broke it down by department, and then applied those costs proportionally to the residential tax base and the commercial tax base, and ended up with an average cost right now for those. And this is those costs which vary according to changes in population. And it's $1,039 per capita, or $3,149 per household. And these things include general government, health and human services, culture, recreation department costs, as well as public works and public safety. The town also has fixed costs. You have debt service and some other fixed costs, which don't change with an incremental, a 3% increase in population isn't going to overnight change your debt service payments. They may over the long run in combination with other changes in the town, but you can't allocate that to a single project like this. What I've done is also taken a very conservative approach here. I've been conservative in estimating the property taxes on the low side. And on the costs, I've estimated high. I've included full department costs, even though for general government, for example, your town administrator you're not going to hire an incremental new town, additional incrementer for 100 new people coming to town or 163 people coming to town. Those costs remain solid, but in the interest of being conservative, I've included the full costs in this analysis. And running through the methodology on this and through the model that I built, total annual incremental service cost is about $270,000. So netting that out from the revenues that came in, the $695 in revenue, subtracting the $270 and $1,000 in estimated expenses, runs to an annual net fiscal impact of about $425,000. And stated differently, for every dollar of incremental revenue or incremental costs incurred by the town to service and provide your typical municipal services to the new residents, you gain about $1.57 in new revenue that comes in. So it's a net fiscal positive. And by a relatively large ratio. And with that, plus the one-time building permit fee, the excess building permit fees that may be available to the general fund, it turns out to be a, at least from a fiscal perspective, a positive for the town. So you asked me to keep it brief. I did that, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Craig. Appreciate that. Any questions for Craig from the committee?
I have a question.
Sure. Go ahead, Bill.
Craig, I was just looking at your figures here, and you calculated the money per household. This is an aging group, which will put a burden on public services like the fire department, transporting to hospitals, distances. I think this is going to cost the town a little more money with more personnel to cover these individuals. Do you take that in consideration?
I did not look at it specifically in terms of where that department is now within its capacity to service the existing residents of the town and any new residents. I used an average cost approach, and the assumption there is that within your department, such as your public safety services, that there is sufficient capacity to take on another 160 residents or another 103 units. And the way I estimated this, by the way, is I used a per household number for the number of households for the safety services and for public safety and for public works, because those departments generally serve households, not individuals. But general government, culture and recreation, they serve individuals. So those are estimated on a per capita, per person basis on it.
You don't think the age has a factor in that, where 55 and over is your primary use of an ambulance?
This is not a congregate care facility or one where people are the residents are really at that point where they begin to need a lot more services. They are 55 and older, but the ones I've seen, and I think Lloyd can back me up, they tend to be active seniors. So, they're out there playing pickleball every day, or they're out there in the pool, or they're doing their walking around. They tend to be as healthy, if not healthier, than many of the older residents in Halifax. So the question is it going to increase the number of ambulance calls? Is it going to increase the number of police calls? It really, there's very little evidence out there that shows that that's true.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Any other questions for?
I just have one other thing, and Craig, I appreciate your input and your feedback here. Just to dovetail into what Mike was saying. So, where the U.S. Census of 2010 showed Halifax had a population of 7,500 people and some change. Just a few stragglers there. 2020 showed that it was now at 7,740 some. So there was a growth of 200 people in this 10-year span. What we're looking here at is a growth of 10 years worth of people in 2 years. So I think, along just to reconsider the public service aspect, and I understand what you're saying about people walking and playing pickleball and doing all that kind of stuff. And that's fantastic if they're really that healthy. But the older we get, the more maladies we bring with us. So, I think the public service burden is something that may need to be reconsidered here, just for consideration point.
Yeah, it's certainly a factor. I would certainly agree with that. And it's definitely an aging community as is, and definitely adding to that. Maybe not on day one, I guess, to Craig's point, folks being active and stuff, but it is a longer term concern, I guess, as well, as those folks retirement and stuff.
If I may just add one thing, we're happy to dive in deeper and do a more surgical analysis the way you're describing. But I know from my many conversations with Craig, while it's undoubtedly true that there will be more ambulance calls, I would also point out that the town will not be plowing these roads, which it does every year. So if we were to go through the list of town services one by one, and keeping in mind that Craig used an average approach, which is a first pass approach, if you will, we could look at it on a line by line basis. There would be some items which would undoubtedly be less expensive and others that will be more expensive. I think the ambulance example and the fire department, police department, without any question, will be more than a typical household. And we can do that analysis. And then we would also, of course, look working with you to understand, okay, what are items that maybe are a little bit less, and see where all that comes out. I think, and Craig, correct me if I'm wrong, you know, from experience on these types of communities, they tend to, those things tend to average out. And the big difference here is no school-age children. That's the game changer in terms of the cost to the town. You've got a couple of factors going on here. These will be relatively expensive, high appraisal units relative to just because they're new construction, if nothing else. The town services in terms of maintaining the roads is obviously less, and there are no school-age children. So historically, these types of senior communities are a net positive to the community in which they're built. It may not be $450,000. If we were to do a refined analysis, maybe it's $300,000. I don't know the answer to that. But.
Yeah, I would just make the recommendation that, you know, I'm all for making the improvements for our seniors. I think they're such an important part of our community and any community out there. But I think the information that we put out there needs to be accurate. So my recommendation would be that we scrub the report that you've shared with us tonight. You said it's over a year old now. I think that needs to be updated so that it's reflecting accurate numbers. Because this is a huge undertaking for the town to consider. And, you know, to the point that Frank and Jim brought up earlier, if we run into a situation where not all the units are selling, then that's a problem that the town's going to have to face, right? So I think we need to be able to see the numbers accurately in order to really project out what the impacts are going to be to us as a community. And with numbers that are, you know, over a year old, I think that's hard for us to do.
One of the things I don't think, excuse me, I've expressly stated to the Finance Committee is the development that was going in here initially, you know, a little over 200 units was 40B, Chapter 40B development. Anyone who's not totally familiar with that, it's affordable housing. 25% of the units have to be affordable. The state sets a threshold. They want all communities to be at 10% affordable housing units. We're at 2. So Halifax is very open, you know, has to be open to these. So they had their eligibility letter from Mass Housing. They plan to submit a comprehensive permit to our zoning board of appeals. And ultimately, if these zoning changes don't take place at the special town meeting, my understanding is Lloyd, you know, plans to move forward with the 40B development at, you know, 200 units because he has that approval. So this was definitely something we've strived to really negotiate with Thorndike because we view it as much less of an impact on the community than the 200 rental units where you could have families, school-age children, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I guess, Cody, have we sought the feedback from the fire chief though on the ambulance impact, and what was his take, I guess?
Yes, him and I have had several discussions, and you know, we certainly acknowledge that there will be an increase. But he agreed he doesn't think it'll be significant. Just the nature of the seniors that'll be in here will be kind of on the younger, more active side. But there'll definitely be an increase. I mean, there's no denying that.
But do we foresee them needing a staffing increase, I guess, or anything to that effect?
Well, they want a staffing increase before this.
Yeah. Well,
but you know, I think it's one of those things we'll have to wait and see. You know, one of the discussions that I've had, you know, at least internally, and it goes back to what Craig said, where, you know, a lot of our costs aren't going to increase, right? Like we're not going to need to add staff in my office to accommodate this project. And really, there's no mostly in general government. I don't see anywhere where we would have an increase in cost. Where I see an increase potentially is in public safety. In police, in speaking with the police chief, I don't see an increase there. Looking at some of the other communities that have had similar projects, you don't typically see an increase in crime. But you do see the EMS. So even if we had to allocate, 2 new personnel, I think that would be worst case scenario, right? If we had to do that, you're still talking a significant net benefit to the community. Because I think that 230 or 240,000 that Craig had estimated in the cost to us, I think even if we had to allocate that full amount to our fire department, I don't see really anywhere where there would be an additional cost to the town, because the cost really is in those service areas. No additional school age children, so there won't be an impact on the schools. Our general government, we continue to operate unless there was a major increase in development or population, then we would have to look to add staff. So yeah, EMS is where I see there being an increase, and I still think it's something where we're quite net benefit.
Okay, yeah, it makes sense. Thank you, Cody. Any other questions or comments from anyone on the committee? No? Okay, so I guess, the memo that was sent over was a draft as well that was, conducted, looks like back in April last year. So I guess Craig and Lloyd, is it feasible to do a refresh of those figures just so we can get something a little more updated? And if so, when do you think that's something that can be provided?
Well, why don't you let Craig and I and Michael put our heads together tomorrow,
Okay.
and then we'll connect with Cody and see what we can do before December 14th. So and we'll report back to you.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for giving us the time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. So then, jumping back on the agenda here. So, the acceptance of the Finance Committee meeting minutes from October 16th and October 24th. So hopefully everybody received those and reviewed those. Any comments, questions, concerns on the minutes from October 16th? Hearing none. Is there any comments on on the October 24th, I did notice a typo in the exhibits there, just budget. So I asked Katie to update that. So barring that change, I guess any other questions, comments, concerns from anyone on those minutes?
I'll call you back.
Look good to me, Todd.
They look good to you? Okay. Anyone else? Hearing none, I guess, would somebody like to make a motion to approve both sets of minutes from October 16th and October 24th with the amendments made to the October 24th, update the typo on the exhibit?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Michael. Roll call vote. Bill?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes, on October 16th and the revised October 24th minutes.
Jim?
Yes to the minutes.
EJ?
Yes to the minutes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. Motion carries unanimously. The next item on the agenda was just in regards to the overall access level. So everyone confirmed the email permission, so we should be good there with the distribution list there, so that everybody should be good in receiving all the emails. As far as the fiscal year 25 Finance Committee folder, Sandy shared that back on October 30th. I just wanted to confirm that everyone A, received that, and B, was able to access that appropriately.
Yes.
Any issues
Yeah.
from anyone? Everyone's good? Okay, all right, so that will be the place where everything will be dropped, obviously, as we progress through the process. Okay, all right, so that's that one, and then moving on, the agenda then was, I guess, Cody, so the circling back on the building commissioner starting salary.
Yeah, so you may recall at a meeting in October, the Finance Committee, as part of Wage and Personnel, voted to temporarily amend the salary range for the building commissioner. And I presented you with some comparable communities data. So you voted to amend the range. So we re-advertised the position. We received a few applications. We narrowed it down to two qualified individuals that we interviewed. And our unanimous recommendation to the Board of Selectmen was his name is Ed Bailey, certified building commissioner, certified through the ICC, certified through the state of Massachusetts as a building commissioner. But with that being said, the step one, we couldn't come to an agreement on step one. So I'm requesting that the Finance Committee approve its, let me get the number here for you. It's step 5, which is $88,350. The Board of Selectmen approved at their last meeting as well when they voted to appoint Mr. Bailey to the position.
Right, so it was grade 12, step 5, 88,350, right, you said?
It is, yes. And in
Okay, but doesn't that fall in the range? Because I think the range we set was 81 through 90,000.
It does, yeah. The range that you set was 81,880 to 90,999. But per the bylaw, if we start someone above step 1, we're supposed to have the approval.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so
Gotcha.
just want to make sure we're following the process and bringing it forward to you.
Okay.
And it's still below the average in the median. When I did the research, the average was a little less than 93,000, and the median was a little over 95,000. So, and in some preliminary results I've gotten from our compensation study, this falls right where the position should be. So we won't have any issues there.
Okay. Yeah, no, it falls within the range, so no concerns for me directly, but I'll open it up to the rest of the committee. I guess anyone have any concerns or questions, comments?
Cody, when is Mr. Bailey scheduled to start?
December 4th.
Okay. Any questions, comments, and concerns on the approval of the salary range of 88,350?
I'm fine with it.
Okay, hearing none, would somebody like to make a motion to approve the starting salary of 88,350?
So moved.
Thank you, Michael. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Cheryl. Roll call vote. Frank?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes, on 88,350 for the building inspector.
EJ?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. Motion carries unanimously. All right, so then the next item was then reviewing the special town meeting articles, Cody.
Yeah, so I can go through, I'll just go through. The selectmen will be voting on next Tuesday to vote the warrant, which I guess I can get to it now. We need to have a wage and personnel meeting to discuss the results of the compensation study. I've been working with them significantly the past few weeks to really get this done. So it will be done. But I'm thinking at this point, it may be best if we just wrapped it into Tuesday. I'm not sure if the finance committee is available, do a wage and personnel meeting, but maybe before the Board of Selectmen meeting.
So a joint meeting again, or a meeting to occur before the selectmen meeting?
We would do a joint meeting because it would be the full wage and personnel. I will present the results of the reclassification, what we're recommending on the changes, and then we would have you vote the recommended changes for the town meeting warrant.
So that would be what, next Tuesday, the 21st at 6 p.m.?
Correct.
Anyone have any concerns with that? We weren't able to make that that'll be on in person.
So we're gonna cover the study and vote on it in the same meeting?
That is the goal. I mean, if there's questions, I can answer it. I'm going to try to get it to you as soon as I can. We're up against the wire here because we have to have the warrant on the 21st. That's when the board is voting on the warrant.
When does the warrant go to print, Cody? Or have to go to print?
We're not printing the warrant. We're going to do postcards with a special
Okay.
town meeting. We're not required to send it out to every residence like the annual.
That's right, yeah.
What we're going to do is we're going to send out postcards to every resident. Yeah, it really just, it gets tricky with the Thanksgiving holiday. And then we have to have it, the warrant has to be posted 2 weeks before the town meeting.
Okay.
So that's what, December 1st, I guess, then, right? Or thereabout.
Yeah.
The 30th, I guess, of November, really, right? Okay, yeah, so it only leaves another week afterwards.
I mean,
so.
if there's something, to Jim's point, if there's something, that sticks out or that you're unsure of, if we have to postpone it, we have to postpone it. Obviously, if you're not comfortable with it.
Yeah, I think it would be super helpful if we could have if a draft could be circulated before the meeting so we can review it going in.
Right.
So, you know what I mean? So it's not the first time we're seeing it in that session.
As soon as I get a full draft, I will send it to you. You know, I've been focusing on the numbers, but I should have a full draft, pretty close to final draft of the report within the next day or two, and I will send it out to everybody.
Okay, yeah, that'd be awesome. All right, so anyone have any concerns with meeting in person next Tuesday, 6 p.m.? Everyone good with that?
Could be good.
Cody, when you send out your preliminary, and Todd, I do not have questions about Tuesday, sorry, but Cody, when you send out the preliminary, will you have current wages on there in addition to? Okay, all right, great.
Yeah. So what I've been doing, I have an idea of what the ranges will be. What I've been doing is over the past couple of days is plugging in our existing wages, where they would place on the new scale, and the financial impact that it would be not just this year, but also projecting out over the next, 4 to 5 years in our financial projections, and finding a percentile that is advantageous for the town in recruitment and retainment, but also affordable for the town.
Great, thanks.
Cody, I got a little bit of a concern with not printing a warrant and issuing that to a segment of the community that doesn't necessarily do QR codes in the town website.
Yeah, so we'll make them available, Jim, at all of our town buildings. If somebody wants one, we'll certainly have them printed for people. It's just what it comes down to is the print company that we historically have used needed the warrant last week, and we don't have the warrant. The warrant isn't done. And in speaking with our council, there's no obligation to print it and get it sent out to every resident, but we want to make sure that residents are aware. That's why we're going to do the postcard, get it out to everyone. But this is, it's very common. Most towns, if they have a special, do not send it out to every resident. But we want to at least notify everyone. If there was a way to do it, we would. Logistically, there just isn't a way for us to get it done.
Yeah, just several articles that I'm assuming are going to be on this warrant that need to make sure we've got quorum, particularly with the school situation over at Silver Lake on the pre-K, I believe it is, correct?
Mm-hmm.
That we need to make sure we have quorum to meet that. And then there's the Thorndike zoning on there as well, that for us to go forward with the senior center in the building of the Thorndike property.
Mm-hmm.
And that particular segment, doesn't always do the QR town website thing.
I'm in complete agreement with you. We'll have them printed and we'll have them placed at the mobile home estates. We'll have them at the Council on Aging.
Okay.
We're going to do plenty of outreach. Thorndike themselves are planning outreach at the mobile home estates. They've been doing some outreach at the Council on Aging. We're going to look to offer rides, ahead of time through the Council on Aging, not just for seniors, but for anybody that needs them. So, the word is certainly getting out, and we'll continue to get the word out. And like I said, we're still going to send something to every single resident in town. It's just not going to be a full warrant.
Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure that the word is out there on some of these articles that we need to get through on the 14th.
Different.
Yes, we will definitely make sure that the word is out. I think in speaking with the seniors, I think them alone will get us the quorum that we need. And I think, there should be a good showing by those in the schools, to make sure that this regional passes as well. And I think, we have a lot of employees that live in town, and, they know a lot of people, so they'll also get the word out, in particular about the reclassification and all the articles. So we'll definitely going to continue to get the word out.
Yeah, there's a lot of heavy hitters on this article, on this warrant, I mean.
There are. So I can, to give you an idea, so we have the Thorndike articles. There's going to be a few of those. The first one will be to rezone 265 Monpont Street to commercial. So it's just that parcel there. The second would be the creation of the senior housing overlay district, which basically says you can build a project such as this, senior housing over 55 plus condominiums, in areas where you apply this overlay district. So we're not changing the zoning, but we're just putting this district in addition over it. We decided to do it this way because we felt it gave town meeting the most control. It only would allow the changes for these two parcels. And if there were any changes that a developer or somebody wanted to do in the future, they would have to bring it back to town meeting to apply the overlay district to whatever parcels that they're looking at, and they'd have to be commercially zoned as well. So there's those articles. We have the approval of the master development agreement. So we've been working with Thorndike to negotiate a master development agreement. It lays out much of what we've spoken about tonight on our obligations and their obligations, and as long as we hold up our end and the zoning changes, so on and so forth, what they are required to contribute to us, which is the selling us that land for $10, donating the pickleball courts, and then conveying the payments to us as the units get sold. And there's also just some additional legal language that our council has put in there. We have the REITs. So town meeting in 22 voted to fund that 1.7 million for the renovation of the Halifax Museum. Obviously, that is no longer moving forward. So what we need to do, the article was very specific in stating that the funding was to be used for the renovation of the Halifax Museum. So now we need to reallocate that funding for this project, so we can put forward our 1.2 million share of building the new Council on Aging. So we'll have that as well. We have the revised regional agreement. So I'm not sure, I'm sure you have heard the DESE, Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, is requiring that our regional agreement with Kingston and Plimpton be revised. Basically, our pre-K has been operating illegally since its inception, and the fact that we've operated a regional pre-K, but it's not written in the agreement. The agreement would technically, we would each operate our own pre-K like we do our elementary schools, but in order to continue operating on a regional level, which obviously has significant cost benefits to the town of Halifax, we need to update that agreement. So that's really the major change there. And then we have the wage and personnel updates, which will include the reclassification and compensation that we've been working on. And those are the big ones. That's pretty much what it is. There may be one other article to do with the zoning and Thorndike development, but it's all related to that project.
Cody, can I ask you a random administrative question on the Thorndike project?
Sure.
Where they are making the mitigated mitigating payments back to us for the senior center and pickleball courts. I know that they had mentioned that they have intentions of bidding on that work as well. There's no issue with conflict of interest with that, where they're making the mitigating payments back to us.
No, that's actually the reason why we're doing it this way. Massachusetts has very stringent procurement laws to avoid just illegal acts. So we've really been working on what is the best way to do this and also open it up to anybody. And so we'll follow the procurement process as we would if we were not receiving any of their money, or if we were building this completely on our own. We'll put it out to bid, and it's completely private process and confidential. So they have no clue what anyone else is going to bid, and nobody has any clue what they're going to bid. Everyone's provided with the same documentation. And once they give us that money, it's our money. So we have to follow the process anyways. So no issues. We run it by Office of the Inspector General and through our council and through their council, and come up with this kind of creative solution in order to make sure we're following the law.
Cool. Thank you.
All right, sounds good. I guess any questions, Cody, on the summary of the articles, I guess, as of now?
And I'll send out, when I get the compensation study, when I send that out to you guys, I will send you a draft of the warrant. And then, it'll be helpful at your meeting following next week. So let's see, whatever meeting you have, either at the beginning of December or early
It'll
October.
probably be December 4th would be our next scheduled one, I guess.
So it'd be good. We can go through and you can vote on recommendations at that meeting. Yeah.
Yep. No. Okay. All right. So hearing none, I guess we can move on. So the next item on the agenda is the committee liaison updates. I don't know, Jim or Frank, was there anything material to update on the planning board there? Or? No. Okay. And then on
our next meeting, Todd, is actually tomorrow night.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I guess, Cody, on the capital items, have those all flown in? I think we had a due date of last Monday or something like that, right? I don't know. Have those all come in? I guess, are we still chasing any or?
They were due on November 7th. I have gotten a majority of them. There are one or two large departments that I still need to get them from. And Sandy and I will be sitting down with them. There are some that need a little bit more work than others. And we also want to make sure that everybody is capturing all of their, all of their capital costs. So I think sometimes our departments didn't necessarily think quite far out enough, and just thought, more small scale this year, or really, really big scale projects. But we want to make sure we're capturing as much as we can. There's going to be some things we just don't, things always come up during the year, but we want to try to plan as best we can. So I'm hopeful that throughout the rest of November, we can refine those, and then we can touch base on capital planning to meet sometime in December, just start reviewing them, and then we'll go through that process.
Okay. All right, sounds good. I guess, so moving on, the next item was correspondence and as may arise. I haven't seen any correspondence come through. I don't know if anyone else has received anything. No? Okay. Any other particular items for tonight? No? Okay. I guess that opens us up to the public participation. Let's see a few folks on. Is there anything from public for tonight? No? Okay. All right, hearing none, I guess it brings us to the end of the agenda. So the next meeting will be, like we said, Tuesday, the 21st at 6 p.m. for a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen to cover the wage and personnel. And then we'll look to meet again on December 4th to review and vote on the town meeting article. Those will be our next two planned dates, I guess, there. If there's nothing else from anyone, would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Cheryl. Roll call vote. Bill?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes, to adjourn.
Jim?
Yes, to adjourn.
EJ?
Yes, to adjourn.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. Meeting is adjourned at 7:07 p.m. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thanks,
good night.
everybody.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Good night. Good night.